Good evening and welcome to all those who are in attendance tonight. We have a great conversation that we'll be having in regards budgeting today. Couple of housekeeping items that I kind of want to go through really quick is that you will have several functions that you can use to answer questions and to get those questions answered. So tonight's topic is going to be budgeting basics, and we're going to be talking about several items and strategies to kind of enhance and improve your financial footprint and profile. But before we get started, I want to take a moment to kind of introduce myself and introduce my colleagues in the back who will be supporting and helping me facilitate this workshop. My name is Alfredo Martinez here at CBC Federal Credit Union, Community and Special Events Coordinator. Behind the scenes, we have Annette Vega Young and Ubaldo Martinez. I'm gonna give them a quick second to kind of say hi to you guys and introduce themselves, as they will be kind of answering any questions and facilitating the workshop on the back. So Annette.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us this evening. I am the AVP of Service Experience and oversee our branches and call center. Looking forward to hearing everyone's questions and excited to be here and part of this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Ubaldo?
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Ubaldo Martinez. I'm the branch manager here at the Ventura location. Also looking forward to this great seminar that marketing and CBC is putting together. So looking forward to answering all your questions.
Thank you for those introductions, team. One last special shout out to Heather Waters, who's gonna be behind the scenes helping facilitate this workshop. And so, like I said, my name is Alfredo Martinez. Happy to have you all here tonight and speaking about the basics around budgeting. Without further ado, let's begin. That said, budgeting is a key part of building and maintaining financial health. No matter what your personal financial situation is, knowing how to create and use a budget will help you better manage your money, get closer to reaching your financial goals. So today we will learn many techniques that will help you manage your money and improve your overall understanding of how to achieve and maintain financial health. As we know, in today's climate, maintaining financial health is ever more than important, and we'll be covering our useful techniques and strategies to help you do so. We have outlined some goals, and let's review them. In this workshop, you will explore the importance of creating and maintaining a budget. We're going to examine the differences between wants and needs. We're also going to set goals for spending and saving, as well as debt repayment. Lastly, strategies to improve our savings, manage our debt, and improving financial health are all surrounded around this topic and conversation of budgeting. So we're also going to be using a 5-step plan to create and manage a budget, and we're going to be using a profile to help us understand these items. But before we begin and jump into the workshop, I really want I want the context to be out there for all the attendees and kind of establish what a budget is and some of these definitions. As we know, budgeting is a big part of personal financial management. So before we dive in, let's talk about what a budget is and what it's used for. So we're going to begin with the what, the why, and the when. Then in the next session, we'll explore the how. So let's go ahead and answer the first question. What is a budget? Developing a budget can help you identify ways to reduce your spending and or increase your savings. For an example, budgeting a certain amount for your groceries or your food is an essential part or a good piece of information to know when you're building out your budget. So why use a budget? Well, it can help you understand your spending habits, create a savings plan, and pay off your debts. So it helps you determine how much money you can spend on certain things such as rent, utilities. And in this workshop, we're going to examine a budget worksheet. It's really a financial plan to help you understand how you should spend and save each month. Using a budget worksheet and taking action to plan for spending and saving are helpful ways to manage your personal finances and progress towards financial health and strength. So let's get started. So when can you use a budget? Well, budgets can be used regularly to help you maintain good financial practices, or they can be used to help achieve a specific goal. So keep this in mind as we're going to be talking about all these topics and strategies. Put yourself in the shoes and ask yourself, am I following some of these strategies? You may already have a well-developed budget, but you may be able to take away certain elements of tonight's conversation. So what we have here is Marta. Marta's financial profile is essentially going to be the persona we're going to be using for tonight to help us understand some of these topics. In this workshop, we're going to examine this financial plan, and we're going to use the 5-step plan to help Marta ultimately build out her budget, as she recognized that her old system of paying bills wasn't really working. She often missed due dates and incurred late fees. So she's really deciding to develop a system that would work effectively each month to help her stay on top of her bills. If you happen to have and downloaded the participant guide, you can turn to page 3 to follow along with this this slide here. So again, Marta's a 40-year-old woman. She has 2 jobs at a grocery store and a hostess at a restaurant. She often feels overwhelmed about her large debt. She has also paid bills late in the past, and one reason is that her personal finances aren't very organized. So we're going to use this 5-step plan to help her better understand her options, her behaviors, and also look at what solutions that she has to look for. Creating and using a budget or a financial plan can be helpful in identifying ways to improve your financial situation. Should make you more aware of your financial habits and may help you find ways to decrease debt and save for the future. So building a budget does not have to be complicated. There are 5 basic steps, and many of you may already be taking some of these actions. So as we go through these 5 steps, ask yourself, am I following any of these 5 steps now, or should I consider incorporating these into your current budget now? So let's start with step number 1, getting organized. You want to be able to locate and identify where your financial documents exist or live. As an example, bank statements, do they exist in your desktop? Are you getting them in the mail? If so, where are they being secured? Knowing where you can go to get some of this financial information is crucial in the first step in developing a budget. Step number 2 is listing income. How much money is earned each month after taxes from a paycheck, Social Security, or any other means? Understanding what type of income is on a monthly basis is being generated on your end, and being able to list that will be the second step and a crucial part in developing a budget. Step number 3, you're going to be listing your expenses. So how much money is spent each month and on what? So understanding your spending habits can really tell you a lot about yourself as an individual and as a consumer. This would be a great point of reflection and understanding, how much am I spending on my needs versus my wants? Am I spending a little bit too much on eating outside and maybe buying more pizza than I should have? This is an excellent point that we'll be looking down the road in an area where you can kind of mitigate some of your expenses and help you save more as you like to improve your financial health. Step number 4 is all about listing your savings. So how much money is being set aside for savings? When it comes down to savings, my approach is that regardless of what the amount is, developing that habit early on can lead to better habits and better financial health down the road. Common example is, even if you're able to save $20 a pay period, $40 a pay period, in essence, what you're really developing there are positive financial habits that will ultimately allow you and give you financial freedom as you kind of go through your life stages. Step number 5, listing any debt. So how much money is owed to creditors? So this is going to be a point where you're going to be listing your credit cards, your auto loans, your home loans, any other personal debts that you may have. Why is this important? Well, knowing what you have to pay back and what kind of responsibilities and obligations you have will allow you to kind of build your budget surrounding this, where you can still save and you can still have the lifestyle that you like. Building a budget does not have to be really complicated. So these 5 steps, we're going to be executing these 5 steps with Marta's story and helping her develop her budget. And maybe these strategies will be useful to you as the attendee tonight. So let's start off with step number 1, listing off our financial documents. So here's going to be a quick question for you, and in any moment now, you're going to see a poll launch, and I want to take about 30 seconds to the best of your ability, answer the question, which of these financial documents would Marta need for her budget? So we're going to go ahead and give about 30 seconds for this question, and then shortly after, you're going to go ahead and see the responses in real time here. So remember, she only needs documents that will help her track her spending and earning. And if you are following along on the participant guide, turn to page 3 as Marta's story, and you can actually circle the documents that you think that she will need there as well. So great. I'm seeing all the responses come in. We're about at 70% participation rate there. And it looks like the majority of the answers there is going to be all of the above. And for those individuals who might have clicked something else, you aren't wrong either. Those items are absolutely useful in developing a budget. So let me go ahead and I believe the results are being shared now. So you can kind of see where everyone else is at as far as what they think that should be included in the budget. So I'm going to take a quick moment to talk about some of these items here. And so as you have seen on this slide, you're going to see the items that were on the poll as well. So let's take a quick moment to talk about why some of these items should be present when developing a budget. She's going to need her credit card statements, bills, loan statements, and receipts to show her debts and expenses. Having all these items will give you kind of that step number 3 about listing your income and giving you a great place to start as far as what is your total monthly income. Once Marta has organized all her financial paperwork in separate and labeled folders, she has completed step 1 and has all the information she needs to continue to steps 2 through 5 for the budgeting plan. So as the items that you see listed down here below, pay stubs has crucial information in developing a budget, as it gives you information like your net income and your gross income. Again, so really quick, gross income is pre-taxes and any deductions that you may be taking off of your gross income. After that, what you have is your net pay. So this is after items like Social Security, any other obligations that you may have, or even a deferment to a 401k as an example. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at how Marta made a budget after she found these items. She found how her monthly income, she found her total of expenses. And so what does a sample budget look like for Marta? Well, what you see here is really Marta's sample budget. And what you will be doing is learning how to build and use and manage a personalized budget that fits for you and your needs. After each step, think about how you might fill out on budget worksheet on page number 9. You're going to be able to kind of list out some of your items, your incomes, your expenses, and kind of gather this information so you can always refer back to it when you begin developing your budget. After this workshop, you can take the time to accurately fill out your worksheet if you don't have it in front of you now. But let's go ahead and look at Marta's sample budget and talk about some of the items that she has here. Let's go ahead and refer to her income first. So income refers to the amount of money earned from almost any source, such as a paycheck, Social Security, or other social benefits. If your paychecks aren't consistent, use them to calculate the total monthly income, because your budget activities are based on a monthly income figure. So in Marta's case, she gets paid every 2 weeks. She has no other forms of income. So Marta's strategy for tracking her income was to add up her pay stubs and determine her monthly income and list it in the income column. So as you see here on the slide, Marta's monthly income is at $2,000 a month. We made it nice and easy, round number. So we'll be doing calculations down the road so we can understand these items a little bit easier. The next thing that you're going to see is some of the expenses that she has listed. Expenses refer to the amount of money spent each month on bills and other items. It's helpful to think of these expenses in 2 categories, needs and wants. So remember, needs are the things that are necessary for your health and well-being, like electricity, transportation, mortgage payments, or rent, groceries, childcare, etc. Many times we confuse the needs and the wants. And so wants are things that you can live without, such as dinners at restaurants, beauty products, lottery tickets. Sometimes we can turn into a need. For example, a new winter coat could be a want, but if your child outgrows their coat, then a new one can become a need. So understanding your wants and needs is a great way to kind of develop some of these understandings of yourself as a consumer and your own personal spending habits. Ask yourself now, are your last few purchases, if you were to go on your mobile app, on your application, are some of those expenses more needs or wants? And think about it, am I budgeting accurately and allocating funds to these specific areas, or can I be a little bit better in those areas? So let's take a quick second to look at some of Marta's needs. You see rent, groceries, utility, car payment, and car insurance. And we listed some items, the cost of her needs accordingly there. So her total needs come out to $1,220. Let's look at her wants. So Marta's sample budget, she knows that she likes coffee. She likes to eat out as well, her form of entertainment and clothing. And that totals out to about 210 a month. One thing about wants that I really want to say is that think about what it is you could live with and without. And so for in this case, Marta likes to consume coffee at $20 a month. How many individuals probably exceed this amount on a monthly basis? I know for a fact that Starbucks and Coffee Beans average price is anywhere between $5 to $7 to $8. And so ask yourself, how often are you making these trips? Is this a point where you can maybe make coffee at home and maybe limit that expense so you can allocate more towards your savings or more towards debt repayment, as an example. And then in this sample budget, we also list Marta's debts. So we know that she has a credit card and student loans, which totals about $300 a month. And Marta's also able to save a monthly contribution of $100. So we're going to take the sample budget and we're going to apply different budgeting strategies and techniques to see if we can help Marta develop better budgeting habits and ultimately allow her to achieve her financial dreams. So the first strategy that I really want to talk about is the 50-30-20 rule. The 50-30-20 rule talks about essentially no more than 50% of your income on needs, no more than 30% of your income on wants, and at least 20% of your income on savings and or debt. So remember, the 50-30-20 rule is nothing more than a budgeting strategy for us as people who are going to be budgeting our own budgeting document. Is really a benchmark for yourself to follow, and so you understand, am I following best practice? Sometimes it's hard to understand what is 50% of my income on needs and 30% of my income on wants and 20% of my income on savings and or debt repayments. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to go use Marta's sample budget to kind of build out some of these calculations to see if we're maintaining the 50-30-20 rule. And remember, this is nothing more than a strategy. Most likely your budgeting will look nothing like this and will be completely different as well. So keep in mind that there is flexibility and ultimately you're developing the best strategies and techniques for you, for your financial profile. So let's look at the 50-30-20 rule a little bit more closely. So the 50 rule says that no more than 50% income on needs. So we were able to look at Marta's needs and see that she spends 1,220. 50% of 2,000 is at $1,000. So Marta's actual spend, according to the 50-30-20 rule, she's actually above the 50% mark, which wouldn't be indicated as best practice. But again, remember, everybody's financial profile is going to be a little bit different. And so really what you could use this is as a way to understand your spending habits and see if there's ways that you can kind of maintain the 50-30-20 rule for best practice. Following along the 50-30-20 rule, we have the 30 rule. So it says that no more than 30% of your income on wants. So we did know Marta's wants, which came out to a total of 210. So what's 30% of 2,000? That's going to be $600. So Marta's actual, she's well under the 30 rule. And she's actually doing really well in this area. So again, use this as a point of reflection for yourself. Am I following best practice? Or maybe I need to dial back a little bit on my wants and I can allocate a little bit more, whether it be savings or debt repayment, as an example. Moving forward to the 20 rule. So remember, the 20 rule says that we don't want to spend at least 20% of income on savings or debt repayment. So what is Marta currently doing? So we know that she's contributing $100 towards her savings and that she has $300 of debt each month. So what is the 20% of her income? That's going to come out to $400. So what is Marta's actual? So we know that she's doing $300 towards debt and $100 towards savings, which is a total of $400. So she's right at the 20% rule and following 2 out of the 3 suggested best practices. And again, it's important to note that your figures will look a little bit different, and then this will give you the information that you need to, so you can kind of make these adjustments and understand your personal habits a little bit better. And here we are again with Marta's current monthly spending, her sample budget. So again, let's look at how Marta made a budget. Marta's sample budget will help you learn and how to build and use and manage a personalized budget. After each step, think about how you might fill out the budget worksheet on page number 9 if you happen to have it in front of you. You're going to be able to list these items accordingly and help you kind of gather this information so you can help build your own financial budget. We learned about the 50-30-20 rule. So what other methods are out there for individuals who want to maybe try something a little bit different? Maybe you're a little bit more, you like to be a little bit more detailed, you like to have a little bit more options. Well, what I'm going to introduce to you now is a categories method. The category method is really about just being extremely detailed in your finances. You're going to use percentages and categories to help you understand your spending habits and developing your financial plan. So as an example, the categories method says that you want to allocate certain percentages to these categories. In the total of 100%, as an example, housing, it says that you want to allocate about 30% of your income towards housing. For utilities and other housing expenses, you want to be about 10%. And as you see, the list goes on and on. 10% for groceries, 10% for transportation, including your vehicle loan, 10% for debt repayment, which could be student loans or credit cards, 10% for savings, 5% for dining out, 5% for car insurance, miscellaneous auto expenses, clothing, entertainment, etc. So how does this look in real time? Let's go back to Marta's sample budget. So I took a couple elements of Marta's actual budget and kind of put it in a categories method for you so you can kind of see what this looks like. So we know that Marta spends about $600 on housing. So that does actually equal to 30%. So she's actually following the categories method of no more than 30% of your income on housing. I understand that in the current area here in Ventura County, housing is quite expensive and it tends to be a little bit more than 30% or even 50%. So keep in mind that it's very crucial to understand where your money is going so then you can better allocate towards some of the other areas or other expenses that you may have. As an example, let's look at her utilities. So Marta pays $100 at utilities. According to the categories method, it says that you want to spend about 10% on this specific category. Well, she's at 5%. So in short, she's following good practice if she were to use the categories method. You see her grocery spend, her actual is $200, which equals to the 10%. And again, following the categories method. And dining out, she's actually below the recommended 5% at a 3.5%, what's $70 a month. So she's doing well in some of these categories. One of the areas where she's spending a little bit more is, as an example, is car insurance. So car insurance is, she's spending about 6%, which is $120 a month. So why is this method beneficial, or how can it help you kind of redirect your finances? Well, as an example, if Marta could obtain more affordable car insurance and keep it under $100 and under 5%. This is a great point for you as the attendee that will be building out their budget. Maybe there's an opportunity for a shop around, find a better deal as far as car insurance in this example, and so you can slowly limit your expenses. And again, these the 50-30-20 rule and the categories method can be easily adjusted to suit your personal needs. You may have different expenses that you see listed here, such as childcare or educational expenses, or you also may have no debt. Your numbers will most likely be different, but keep in mind, this will kind of give you, put you behind the wheel as far as how to drive your finances and how to make some of these decisions yourself. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about building a savings fund. So we learned the 50-30-20 rule. We learned the categories method and how to develop some of these budgets and how to look at them. One of the major important parts of building a budget is also, making sure that you save for either a rainy day fund or even for retirement. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use the 50-30-20 rule to kind of talk about this, as well as a good general rule of thumb. So how do we start building a savings fund for ourselves and making sure that we're prepared in any major life events or any financial hardship? We're going to use the 50-30-20 rule, and the rule of thumb is to save 3 times the total of your monthly expenses to cover any sudden hardships or major life events. So let's calculate both of these options and allow Marta to make the choice. So let's do the 50-30-20 rule first. According to the 50-30-20 rule, you should save 20% of your income. So if we know Marta's monthly income is $2,000, annually that is $24,000. And again, these numbers are just rounded for simplicity's sake. So 20% of $24,000 is $4,800 per year. And if we break that on a monthly basis, that's $400 per month. So we know that Marta is contributing to her savings $100 a month. So she's falling short as far as the 20 rule in the 50-30-20 by $300. Again, I think that the important point here is to understand is the financial habits that you will build by just, even if it's a third of what's recommended, getting in that getting in those positive habits will ultimately help you build financial freedom and kind of build the confidence as well. And as time goes, you're going to be able to make better decisions and ultimately maybe allocate more towards your savings fund. Let's say that 20% of your income is a little bit difficult to do. So let's look at another rule of thumb, which is 3 times the total of your monthly expenses. So let's look again to Marta's sample budget. So we know that Marta's total monthly expenses are essentially in 3 categories: needs, wants, and debts. So her needs are about 1,220. Her wants are about at 210. Her debts are at 300. And the total is about 1,730. So if we take her total monthly expenses and times that by 3, we're at 5,190. And so why is it the rule of thumb is to save 3 times total of your monthly expenses? Well, think about it this way. In the event of financial hardship or loss of employment, you should be able to sustain yourself for a short period of time after that hardship occurs. And really, the rule of thumb is 3 times the total monthly expenses, but there isn't really a best figure. Obviously, the more that you can put towards a rainy day fund or a savings fund, the better. But according to this rule of thumb, she would need to be saving about $5,190 to ensure that she is covered for at least 3 months in the event of a major life event or a hardship, as an example. So again, I think the key takeaway is to ask yourself, how do you determine how much to save? And these 2 strategies are nothing more than ways to kind of get you started in thinking about how can I prepare myself for any type of event, any type of financial event that I may be incurring. So take a quick second and ask yourself, is my current savings going to ensure that my monthly expenses are covered for 3 months? If not, then what can I start doing today to start developing this? And I would say that you already are on the right track. You are here today developing a budget, learning techniques and strategies to help prepare you in regards to financial health. And so keep that in mind as you kind of develop these budgets, and be realistic with yourself as far as how much I can actually contribute to a savings fund. One of the common questions when it comes to budgeting is should I pay down my debt, or should I save a little bit more and just pay the minimum? Well, again, I think that this is going to be an internal conversation that you as the attendee needs to have, because there are 2 different strategies between as far as debt reduction strategies, and that's actually what we're going to go into next here. And so kind of moving forward to the conversation is how do we make the best decisions for ourselves today? Well, let me introduce you to 2 different debt reduction strategies. They're very popular, and maybe this will kind of help guide that internal conversation within yourself in deciding, hey, how can I best go about this? So let's talk about the ladder method. So the ladder method essentially says that you want to list all of your debts from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. Depending on the budget method that you choose, the 50-30-20 rule or the categories method, determine what percentage of income should be allocated to debt repayments. You want to ensure that your monthly minimum payments are met for each debt category. So at minimum, satisfy the minimum requirement for that credit card, for that auto loan, for that home loan, etc. And ultimately, what the ladder method says is to pay off the debt with the highest interest rate first. And so what you have here on the right-hand side is Marta's debt balance sheet here. We have credit card A, credit card B, and her student loans. You're going to see the balance at $307,000. And it's also going to show the interest rate there at 23%, 18%, and 12%. So think about it this way. The ladder method, and the reason why it's called is that you want to think about that you're kind of going through each step of the ladder with paying off the debt with the highest interest rate first. So before I go any further, I want to launch a quick poll to see what you gauge and what Marta should pay off first. So the question is which debt should she pay off first using the ladder method? And then we're going to go ahead and talk about some of your responses here, and we'll kind of gauge what the room is thinking. So I'm getting responses in. It looks like at this time, majority of you have selected credit card A. So majority of you are saying that she should pay credit card A first if she were to use the ladder method. So that's, remember, point D down there says pay off the debt with the highest interest rate first. So yes, the answer would be credit card A. So let's talk a little bit more about why credit card A would be the first choice if she were to adopt the ladder method. Well, remember, she is paying the highest interest rate on credit card A at 23%. So using the ladder method would help her save money in the long run. And how does that exactly work? Well, essentially, the way that it works is that your interest rate is going to be, your minimum payment is going to be dependent on your balance and the interest rate on that type of line of credit. So her interest rate is 23%, which means that payment is going to actually be a little bit higher than maybe her credit card B, as an example. So if she were to tackle the highest interest rate first, that would essentially free up her money and allow herself and Marta will be allowed to pay off credit card B and tackle her student loans first. So really, this comes down to one, personal preference, and also what your budget allows you to do. But a ladder method really says, hey, I want to tackle the highest debt first, the highest interest rate first, just because I know that will allow me a little bit more financial freedom once I'm finished paying off that debt. And that's how you kind of want to think about it when you're using the ladder method. Let's talk about another debt reduction strategy known as the snowball method. So the snowball method may help Marta as she is making progress because it could potentially pay off her entire credit card, in this example, in credit card B in 1 to 3 months. So let's talk a little bit about that. The snowball method lists you would want to list all of your debts from the smallest balance to the largest balance. Depending on your budget method, the 50-30-20 rule or categories determine how much you want to have allotted for this debt reduction strategy. And so again, ensure that your monthly minimum payments are met in each debt category. But what the snowball method really is you want to pay off the small balance first. So the figure that you see to your right is again the same figure that you saw in the previous slide with regards to the ladder method. And so again, we're going to go ahead and launch a quick poll just to kind of gauge the room to see what we think is going to be the best strategy here. So which debt should she pay off first using the snowball method? So it's been a little bit about a minute now, and most of you have answered the question here. So it seems like it's a consensus here is that credit card B is the most selected response here. And so remember, the snowball method says to pay off the smallest balance first, which happens to be credit card B at $300. So why is this is the case? Why is it that we want to implement, why would a snowball method work versus a ladder method? Well, it may help Marta feel like she's making progress because she could, like I mentioned earlier, potentially pay off the credit card, in this case, credit card B, sooner rather than later. If she were to give herself a time frame of 3 months, as an example, she could pay this off, and then she can allocate that monthly minimum payment towards another debt. As you see, the student loans is probably the largest loan balance you hear at 7,000 and the smallest interest rate of 12%. So the way you want to think about your debt is that if you have smaller items like credit cards that may be more achievable to pay off sooner versus a home loan or an auto loan, so you want to focus on how can I implement the best strategy in accordance with your budget to eliminate these debts. The ladder method was kind of step by step, and the snowball method is all about gaining that momentum. So in Marta's case, if she were to pay off credit card B and get rid of that debt balance that she has, she can continue that momentum and tackle credit card A with a balance of 400. In the event that Marta clears both of these lines of credit without using her credit card once more, she can dedicate even more funds towards her student loans and ultimately decrease that balance sooner rather than later. So the snowball method is really all about kind of keeping that momentum and maintaining it. This is personally the method that I particularly like, because it does, again, make me feel good that I'm making progress and kind of eliminating my debt there. So, think to yourself, take 30 seconds and say, hey, what is my strategy towards paying off my debt if you happen to have any? And if you don't have any, maybe how would you kind of advise somebody to tackle their debt as in a position that you have no debt as well? So again, the ladder method and the snowball method are two different debt reduction strategies that can be implemented in the way that best suits you in developing your own budget. While we talk about eliminating debt and saving funds and listing our income, what are other ways that we, as people who want to kind of empower ourselves financially, where can we find additional funds? Where can we find more money? So we talked about the debt reduction strategies. We talked about budgeting techniques, but let's kind of look a little bit more presently and see what my current financial situation is. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk a little bit about what refinancing can do. So the power of refinancing can actually give money and allow and put funds back into your wallet. It's important to note that refinancing sometimes comes with some myths, and I'm just going to take a quick second to talk about that. There's this notion that refinancing can actually hurt you and damage you in some way, shape, or form. So what I'm going to do today is to talk a little bit about what the power of refinancing can actually do for you as a consumer, and ultimately potentially give money back to you and put it back in your wallet. So what we're going to do is we're going to just look at this quick two models here. Let's say that you're in the market for a new car. Let's say you bought said car. Let's say you bought a 2019 Subaru WRX. And for those who may not be familiar, this vehicle is a four-door sedan, a little bit more on the sporty side. So what we have is two different profiles. We have profile on the left-hand side and profile on the right-hand side. Let's say for whatever reason, we'll say that Marta's profile on the left-hand side at 589, and that's her credit score. So essentially the loan amount that she's going to need to take out is $28,000. The rate that she locked in, but due to her credit, she got a higher rate at 11.84%. Her affordability essentially locked her in at a 7-year, 84-month term. That was the most affordable option that she could choose. The payment amount is $492.16, which the total interest comes out to $13,341 at 24 cents, with a total loan cost of $41,341 and 24 cents. So think about that. Monthly payments at $492. The total interest that's going to be paid on this loan is a little bit over $13,000. A $28,000 vehicle is going to cost me $41,000. Let's say that Marta didn't have any other options, and let's say that she chose this route because of her current financial situation. Remember, she paid bills late. Her credit may not be the best. So let's fast forward and say that maybe a year has passed. Her credit has improved because she has budgeted for her debts and has been able to improve her credit. So let's see what a better profile, a 735 credit would look like on this type of loan. And again, the rates that are shown here in the terms and the payment amounts are really just for educational purposes. There are quite a lot more details that go into this, but for this purpose, we really want to hone in on what refinancing can do for you today. The rate is at 4.39% because of her excellent credit score. The term is going to be the same, But notice the payment amount difference here. The payment amount comes out to $387.86. That's roughly about a $90 to $100 difference in the payment amount. So think about it. That $100 can be allocated towards savings, debt repayment, or other areas in your budget that you want to allocate towards too. The total interest owed comes up to a little bit over $4,500, with a total difference about $9,000. As you can see, as a total loan cost is $32,579. So what's the moral of the story here about the power of refinancing? So let's say that your financial profile at a given time in the past wasn't as well as it is today. Let's say your credit has improved, your financial standing has improved. You may be eligible to refinance, essentially lower your monthly payment, and ultimately put money back in your wallet by saving up to thousands of dollars. So, maybe take a quick second to think about that vehicle loan that you may have, that credit card that you may have, or even that home loan, personal loan, etc. Have you done the due diligence to see what current rates are today? As you know, rates are at all-time low due to the pandemic. So this may be a good opportunity for you to revisit your finances and to see, is there any way that I can put more money in my pocket today, just taking advantage of your improving financial profile and today's rates. So again, there isn't no harm. It is important to note that if when you do refinances, you do go through the process again of application, which means credit run, and all those aspects. But really, the moral of the story here is to understand if your financial situation is improving, is there a possibility to essentially up your budget and potential your total net income, so you can kind of do other activities with these new funds, whether it be, like I said, paying down other debt, saving more, or maybe putting a little bit more in your wants or needs area, and maybe catch up in other areas where you may have left off in prior budgets or prior years. So this conversation really comes down to is how are we going to set these goals for ourselves? How are we going to achieve these items? So remember, setting goals can be viewed as in three aspects: the short term, the medium term, and the long term goals. It is important of any budget to understand your personal financial goals. So while the budget worksheet is a tool that documents spending, expenses, and saving goals are the guiding force behind them, changing your money habits can be challenging. And one way to make that change easier and more possible for yourself and more lasting is to have personal and meaningful goals to motivate you. So setting goals helps you achieve financial strength. And goals don't just happen by chance. They happen through careful planning, patience, through care, and commitment. Having goals helps people be more mindful of their spending and control their bad habits, such as impulse buying, because the goals are a reminder of the reasons for saving. So if you take the time to set financial goals that are meaningful to you, as an example, saving for a new laptop, then the small sacrifice of skipping the cafe on the way to work may become easier. With stronger motivations, you will save the money, not just because your budget indicates that you should, but because you have a specific goal in mind, something that you really want. So like I had mentioned, goals typically fall under three categories: short, medium, and long term. Examples include saving money for items such as birthday gifts, a new car, or even a down payment on a home. Most of your goals will be personal to your lifestyle and preferences, but we recommend including a couple of important goals, like creating an emergency fund. Is that something that can be achieved in a short amount of time? Or do I need to be more realistic with myself and say that this is going to take more to 2 to 5 years, which is more of a medium-term goal? Or it can be paying down debt if you have it. And again, be realistic with yourself. Can I do this in the short term, medium term, or long term? If so, what is your plan and how do you plan to achieve that? Emergencies can appear at any time. They can include things such as car repairs, medical bills, or loss of income for you or your partner. Therefore, it is always wise to have extra savings set aside specifically for emergencies. So, maybe take a quick second now to think about, have you established any financial goals for yourself? If not, the worksheet provided in tonight's resources has a portion where you can kind of have that internal conversation and jot down your ideas. Writing down these goals will will remind you that this is something that's important for you to achieve and important for you to understand as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of revisit these workshop goals that we had today. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of pull up another document that was in addition to the documents that you received for tonight's workshop. So in this workshop, we explored the importance of creating and maintaining a budget. We examine the differences between wants and needs, and we set goals for spending, saving, and debt repayment. Again, strategies to improve savings and manage debt and improving financial health. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up the other document that was in tonight's workshop as well. And hopefully this item here can kind of help jumpstart this budgeting topic for you. So for those that may be a little bit more technically inclined or enjoy Excel, what we have done here is we've kind of built out a workbook for you to kind of play around. The nice thing about this workbook is it lists out a lot of these items that we talked about tonight. And if for an example, you don't really like Excel or using some of these applications, you can do this manually, and there is a sheet within the budget worksheet tonight that you can fulfill yourself. But I want to take a quick second to kind of talk about what this budget workbook does. So in Marta's case, you can put your figure of your monthly income here. And what this is going to do is essentially this field is going to tie into other categories and kind of formulate, it's going to formulate answers for you to kind of give you that quick and dirty, this is what my expenses look like. As an example, we know that in this case, it's already kind of pre-filled out, 700 for rent, for groceries, utilities, et cetera, et cetera. But this is where you can also put other information like educational expenses. Excuse the red font, but essentially what you can do is you can put anything that you want in here, and you see how the total amount will change here. And when you fill out your needs here, and what it will really do is calculate your disposable income. So as an example, we know that the income is 2,000. The needs come out to 1,350. You're going to have this disposable income of 650. So these figures will be kind of populate on themselves. And the important thing here is to note is that you want to be as accurate as possible. So by listing all your needs, all your debts, and your wants, this document itself is going to calculate a lot of this for you. Ultimately, once you kind of fill this out, and it has room for savings contributions, what you're going to really pay attention is to this figure down, this calculation down here below. What this is going to take is your net income, your savings, and your wants, and it's going to see if you have a surplus or if you're running a deficit. And so in this case, there is a surplus of $60. So this means that we paid down our needs. We were also able to pay down our debts, and we're also able to pay our wants. And so what happens if we run a deficit? So let's say for whatever reason, rent increases and it goes up to $1,000. How does that look like on this workshop? Well, down here, it's going to show you that you're in red. Essentially, what that's saying is that you're actually running a deficit, which means you're actually spending more than what you can actually afford to do. And so if you happen to find yourself in this situation, what is it that I can do now to kind of help myself? And again, the first area that you want to go to is your wants. Do I need to be spending $100 a month on restaurants? Do I need my subscription services to Netflix, Hulu, Spotify? And really, this document can kind of help guide this conversation within yourself and even with your family. And so when it comes to kind of building better financial practices, this is exactly what you would need to do in developing a budget that works for you. And the nice thing about this is that if you wanted to, you could actually save this document to your desktop or upload it to Google Sheets if you don't happen to have Excel. We've kind of listed that as well in the email that we sent out a little bit earlier, and how to kind of translate this to Google Sheets if you don't happen to have Excel. But as a tip that you could do as well is you can kind of save and just duplicate this into another sheet, and then before you know it, maybe you can have a 12-month budget workbook, so you can kind of track back your expenses on a complete year period, and you can kind of see your financial habits and make decisions based off of that. So again, all of this information is provided in the email that was sent out a little bit earlier. We'll be sure to include the link as well in the chat here. If I can have any of my team members in the back can put the link in the chat, that would be absolutely wonderful for any individuals who may have not received the email or have trouble accessing said documents. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this, and we're at about 6:20 right now. And what I really would like to do is bring my panelists, Ubaldo and Annette, and really answer any questions that you may have in regards to this presentation tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and kind of answer some of these questions that you may have. So feel free to use the Q&A function. Feel free to raise your hand or use the chat, and we can absolutely have this kind of discussion a little bit more personably. And please do not hesitate to ask any questions. Chances are, if you have a question, another member of the audience tonight probably will have the same question. And I understand that this topic, when it comes to personal finance and budgeting, can be sometimes taboo, as sometimes we realize we're not always using best practices, but now's the time to kind of speak up and kind of take control of your own financial health. So please, we welcome any questions in regard to tonight's presentation. While we have the questions come in, I want to maybe have my panelists kind of speak about what they think and their personal experiences with budgeting. We'll start with Annette.
Okay, thanks, Alfredo. I think one of the key points with saving is definitely thinking about how we can refinance a vehicle. So you touched on that earlier. And your credit score is really important and imperative in order to qualify for that lower score. So a lot of our members, or just family members, friends, they don't know that once you take out an auto loan, you don't have to be stuck into that term for the life of the loan. So if they did start off at the initial point of their auto loan with a very low credit score, if they're making on-time payments after a year, 6 months, they can then reapply to refinance at a lower interest rate because they've now increased their credit score, and that can save them thousands of dollars. The example that Alfredo used earlier is very realistic to what we see with a lot of our members. They start off very new with loans, with credit, and they don't qualify for that lower interest rate. But a year or two down the road, they decide, let me see if I can get a lower interest rate or payment. And they come in and they apply, and they're thrilled because they're now able to save upwards of $100 a month. So I really like that example that you used, Alfredo. I think it's very realistic, and we see a lot of that on a daily basis.
Thank you for that feedback, Annette. Ubaldo, I see some questions here. I'm gonna give you a moment to kind of touch anything you'd like, and then we'll address the questions that I see here that are coming in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you for everybody who are submitting your questions. The biggest thing with budgeting, I think, is having that honest conversation with yourself or your partner or your household, and really kind of break down what expenses are going out. Because a lot of times we mentally think that we have this much money, and we have to be realistic with ourselves and really see the figures and have a plan, have an action plan where you'll be able to set those goals and tackle those small wins, like those really high interest credit cards. And, even stop by your local branch to sit down with the representative to maybe able to assist you in maybe establishing a shared secure loan where you'll be able to build the credit to be able to enhance and increase your credit score to lower those other rates in the future. So.
Wonderful advice there, Ubaldo. Absolutely right on point. It kind of goes back to understanding our personal financial habits and knowing where those small wins are, like you said, Ubaldo. That said, thank you so much for your insight, Ubaldo and Annette. What I'm going to do quickly is kind of answer some of these questions that are coming in here. So one of the questions is it's not directly related to what we're discussing today, but will we be offering additional trainings and covering different topics? Absolutely. We'll be covering topics that are all related and pertinent to financial health and maintaining financial health, essentially. So stay tuned. Just like you were notified about this webinar, we're going to be notifying individuals through email, our social medias, and And those are primarily where you're going to want to get this information. As always, in that email, you have my contact information as well. If there's any questions, whether it's specific to tonight or just in general, feel free to reach out. We're here to help and essentially kind of guide you through these kind of life stages that you may be going through, as we have tools and services and products that may be able to pair with you and kind of give you that financial well-being. Here's another question. Do we have any tips for young adults and college students to start building their credit? There's a lot of tips, and there's actually a lot of myths surrounding this topic as well. But to kind of touch on some of those, one of the quickest ways a young person can start their credit is by joining on a joint credit card with their parent or guardian. They have to be of the legal age of 18, but that's a quick and easy win for that young person. It's essentially, without accumulating their debt, although they are liable for it, will also improve their credit. And so that's a quick and easy way to do so. Thank you for your questions. I see another question here. I think I have some issues with my credit report. I'm not able to qualify for any credit. Do you know how I can find out more information about what's going on? Uvaldo, do you want to take this one? Oh, you're muted, sir.
You're muted.
Thank you. So as the consumer, you have the right to be able to get your annual credit report through online. However, there are different credit monitoring services. I know that CBC is partnered up with Experian and Epic Perks, where you are able to see your credit. So you're able to monitor your credit. You're able to see what's currently under your credit. And if you need to dispute anything, it allows you to get in contact with Experian or TransUnion or Equifax to be able to address any collections or any discrepancies in the credit. So therefore, you'll be able to, once again, kind of have a deeper understanding of what's really showing up in under your credit.
And the credit bureaus, you can reach out to our Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. As Ubaldo stated, you are able to get information regarding your own credit score or credit information. So you can contact any of the bureaus to either file a dispute or to request a free annual credit report.
Thank you for your contributions, both. To kind of tag along that as well, is that the question earlier was, are we going to provide additional trainings? Absolutely. And that's one of the topics that is often requested and often asked, is credit and understanding the dynamics and the components that go into developing a credit score. And tonight, after tonight's workshop, you're going to be sent a survey. And this survey is essentially going to ask you that, what type of information do you want to see? What do you think as a community would be helpful in educating, our fellow Ventura County residents here? And so please be as honest as you can in that survey, as it really guides and directs the nature of our workshops and how we kind of present this. So I really do appreciate that feedback. Another question here: is it a good idea to balance transfer with a 0% interest to pay off my debts faster within a 12 to 8 month period? I'm assuming it will save a lot of money in interest. Annette, do you want to take this one?
Yes. Anytime you're offered a 0% interest to pay down debt, it's never a bad idea, especially if they're not requesting for you to run your credit. So if you do have the ability to do a balance transfer, keep in mind there's usually a fee involved. So it's an upfront cost, but those fees are usually low. They're between 3 and 5% and or a minimum dollar amount. So if you are looking to pay off a balance within 12 to 18 months and they're offering you 0%, recommend not using that credit if the goal is to pay down the debt, but definitely budget. How many payments do I have to, how much do I have to make in a 12 to 18 month payment period to pay off this debt? 0% interest, you're never going to beat that. So if you do have the capability of doing a balance transfer without an additional credit pool, it is definitely a great idea.
Thank you for that explanation, Annette. That's exactly it. Thank you again. Let's see. Any other questions, folks, as they come in? I thought I saw a raised hand there, so feel free to raise your hand. Oh, I think here it is. The question is, if you have a $1,000 credit card limit, how much should you spend? Is paying off in full best? So let me go ahead and answer that really quick. So when it comes to credit utilization, the general rule of thumb is that you don't want to spend no more than 30% of your balance of your credit limit. As an example, you have a $1,000 credit limit. As soon as you start going past the $300 mark on that credit card, that actually may detract from your credit and actually affect you negatively. So the first part of the question is, how much should you spend? Well, if you have the means to, the best answer is not to use the line of credit. But if you must, try to stay below 30% credit utilization rate, as that won't impact negatively your credit score. The second part of the question is paying off in full best? Well, the answer is yes. Why? Is because you're going to essentially limit the interest owed to that creditor and put that money back into your wallet. So if you can, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for the questions. We're at 6:31 p.m. Of the evening. So tonight's workshop has officially concluded, but I'll be happy to stay here for another 10 minutes if the questions continue to come. So I will be here. Feel free to continue the questions if you happen to have any, but if not, the workshop has officially concluded. And I thank you so much for being here tonight and taking the right steps and kind of empowering yourself financially. And of course, the CBC team here is to help. And please continue to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns you may have. Thank you, and I hope to see you guys in future workshops.